much. And as you're talking about our 21st century students and that awareness, what are some first steps that you would recommend for teachers to do in their classrooms to shift toward teaching math for 21st century that includes racial and social justice?
Yeah, well, listen, there's no instruction without a centering of the humanity of the population. And one cannot focus on the humanity of a population until they're really well aware of the racial and ethnic and gender dynamics that exist in the world. That means that you have to confront the ways that math has reinforced these biases historically. You know, what have mathematicians looked like historically? Who's been told that they can do math and who's been told that they're not? Who's been told that you can only do art, but this is just not for you? And so like racial equity in mathematics begins with confronting the ways that math has been a part and parcel of constructing and reinforcing those racial dynamics. And then in addition to this, like facing the issues, is saying, what are ways that we can be futurist? I always say your classroom, your math classroom cannot be a replication of the classrooms of the past. It must be a microcosm and a reflection of the world is not yet. So in what ways are you going to interrupt the ways that things have been in your classroom being a place that should be, right? And it's a really interesting thing. Like, you want us to like be futurist? Yes, there's futurist math. And when you envision a future that exists with racial and ethnic equity, then your classroom has to reflect what that future looks like. And I think it's being future facing to construct a world not yet, rather than the replication of a world that is. I mean, I think that's one dimension of it. Then the other piece for me in racial and ethnic diversity as it relates to math has to be a recognition of the ways that people use math every day that we don't value, we don't appreciate, we don't recognize, we don't bring in a classroom, and we don't use to teach, right? There are complex patterns in hair braids, right? There are complex fractals in the tiles that you find with particular Latinx populations in the world. Like there's so much complex mathematics that people just do intrinsically. There are folks in communities without any resources, without an engineering degree, who can literally take pieces of multiple cars and build a car. And there is car culture within the community with folks who are scientists, mathematicians, and engineers that we don't even consider when we teach math and science to populations. So there has to be a decolonizing of mathematics to recognize that everybody has access to it and everybody does it on their own as it exists. That equates to a decolonizing of the curriculum. You cannot say you want racial and ethnic diversity in math instruction, and the methods that you use to teach, the exemplars that you use to teach mathematics, are not rooted in the ways that communities engage in mathematics already. So sometimes it might mean throwing a textbook out the window, because everything in the textbook does not reflect the community. It might mean then going into places where folks are organically engaging in mathematics, right? I think that we cannot teach math in the 21st century without a consideration of how there's ethnomathematics woven throughout the curriculum. In the absence of ethnomathematics as a strand of math instruction, you don't have math instruction, you have a replication of age-old practices that are necessarily pushing folks out. And so, you know, I don't want to give a whole speech here because this is like my whole heart. But man, there's a capacity to do things differently. It begins with decolonizing the curriculum. It begins with recognizing that math is available and has been used historically by all people. And it also reflects a knowledge that we have to bend the instruction towards the needs and culture of the population and not expect the population to bend itself towards mathematics, right? You can't bend somebody towards math because they do math already. All right, if you're doing math, you can't bend me towards something I already am. If you bend me towards something I already am, you turn me into a pretzel. You just bend me all the way up. And now I can't be free to soak in the new information.